Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the Polyhedron Collider episode 65. I'm Steve Tudor.
I'm Andy Lewis.
And I'm Rory Summers.
We're again a man down.
A man down.
2 podcasts running now he's let us down. He should
But
be punished.
I'm here.
You are.
I'm here.
That's okay.
It's glad to see someone's pulling their weight.
Indeed. I mean, there's a lot of weight to pull, to be fair.
Are we not going to talk about eating Steve again, are we?
We could do, but we would have to talk about eating me as well, because I am a fat bitch these days.
I'm not going to comment, although a button did fall off my trousers earlier this week.
Ooh, dear.
Yeah,
It's a sad day when that
Yeah,
happens.
it really was. I was so disappointed.
Oh, old age is catching up on you, mate.
Did it fall off or did it pop off in spectacular fashion across the room?
I'm going to decline to answer that question, Steve.
I suspect it's the latter.
Did it make a noise as it came off?
Oh man, it's so disappointing. I just sighed, and I just got to work as well because I cycle into work and had put my trousers on. Bollocks. Now I've got to make sure my t-shirt's covering the belt that isn't there, and just heaving my trousers up every few seconds. Rubbish. That was my Monday.
It just reminded me, I went to a wedding a couple of weeks back, and my best mate was also at the wedding. I've known for absolute donkey's years, and he's a big lad, and he's wearing braces, so he doesn't wear a belt. Mm-hmm. He leans, we stand up like any wedding service, you're up and down, right? Yeah. Fiddler's elbow up. Well, he stands up at one point, and there's this look of pure horror on his face, and it's like, "You're all right." And he just leans forward and whispers. He goes, "My braces have just come off my trousers." Like, what do we do? He said, "Let's just all stand very still and hope for the best."
You do so shuffle together, and you hope the force of friction stops his trousers falling down. The side pressure. Oh, good grief. Well, in other news, we have actually exiled John to Scotland.
Yep.
Yes.
Off he goes.
For his sins. He's been turfed out for failing to turn up twice. And thankfully, he's taken his copy of Talisman with us, so that taint is actually further away. Which has put us in good form.
Yes, and hopefully a freak storm will hit the northwest of Scotland and destroy that copy of Talisman once and for all.
Hopefully, yes, because we have been unable to burn it so far. He won't let us, which I think is particularly unsporting.
I thought Talisman was like immune to fire. I thought you couldn't burn it.
Well, there's one way to find out.
I think it's in like a fireproof case now. Yeah.
For some reason.
With thumbprint locks to open it.
Biometric scanner.
I wouldn't put it past John.
No, indeed, knowing that I have designs upon it.
I wouldn't put John past having the idea. It would just take him 5 or 6 years to implement that idea.
True.
That is true, yes.
Try to work out, is it more fun taking the mick out of John when he's here or not here?
Does it matter?
No, it doesn't.
No. Crack on.
Since we've left John out in the cold, the news ferrets then fall to the ownership of the other half of the news desk.
Yeah, the new boy.
It's time for some news.
One of the most interesting things I've spotted recently in the news was that the NLS, or the National Library Service, has now produced a fully navigatable audio version of the D&D Players Handbook. For those people that are blind and partially sighted, it's a free service that they do over in the States. That if there's a particular book that you're after, you can get an audio or braille version. So these volunteers, have put this all together. So you can now, if you are visually impaired, start playing D&D and read the book experience the Players Handbook all on your top now.
That's pretty cool, actually.
It's really cool. I mean, I don't know how they've done all the tables and all the charts. I'd be quite interested to see how someone that is visually impaired is going to experience those in an audio format. But either way, I think it's flipping amazing.
Do you know what? I reckon it might even be better in some ways, because if presumably it's audio, it's vocally activated, so you can see, go to chapter 9 or combat or whatever it is, and then you could presumably vocally search for a phrase or a turn, like using the index.
Okay.
And I think that might actually make it more easy to navigate it, because the Player's Handbook is not the easiest thing to navigate.
Not
Where's this
especially.
bloody rule? Which section's it in? You know, you're looking for something like, say, for example, passive perception, which is not where you'd think it was. No, it's buried somewhere.
Travel distances.
Exactly.
That's the one that always gets me every bloody time. The rules for travel are in one section of the rulebook, and the speed at which you can travel based on various modes is in a different part of the rulebook.
It's dead handy, that.
Do you reckon you could also use this in the middle of sessions? So, you know, someone gets a rule wrong, or someone tries to argue, like, oh, this is how the rule goes, and you can just go, no, shut up, press the button, and it just speaks the rule out to them.
Silence, mortal.
Oh, yeah, it's got to start with that, hasn't it? Yeah, like in-game mode and out-of-game mode.
That would be cool. No, that's a really good service. So hopefully, I mean, presumably, is that available now then, Rory?
As I understand it, yes, it's available now. I'd imagine it's only available in the States currently. But the Wizards of the Coast were kind of, lauding the praises of the National Library Service. So we'll see how it extends. I know the guys are now working on the Dungeons Master's Guide and the Monster Manual. But I imagine a job like this is going to take months.
God, yes. I mean, geez, I haven't even read the books I've got, and I've got all of them. Yes, that is quite an undertaking, so fair play to them.
In other news, Kickstarter have updated their guidelines on the honest and clear representation of products.
Sorry. Carry on.
So it's a pretty big deal. So they're now saying that you're not allowed to use those funded in X amount of hours badges on your campaign page. You're also not allowed to use rendered versions of your product. You're not allowed to talk about your product as if it already exists. You're not allowed to mention the recommended retail price and that Kickstarter is going to be X discount below this. They've changed or updated so many of these little things, which means that I think a lot of Kickstarter projects are actually kind of bending/breaking the rules currently.
I looked at this, and the reason why I laughed is because I saw this list of things that they said you shouldn't be doing these, and this list of things was everything that every tabletop Kickstarter does. It was like, this is the checklist of things you shouldn't be doing, yet it was a checklist of what every single bloody Kickstarter project does. You know, anything to do with miniatures, renders.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, most of the board game shots you see in a Kickstarter will be a render as well.
Absolutely.
Yes.
If you see the box, it's a render, more or less. So I don't know how strict they're going to be on this. I mean, the rule is, and I quote, failure to honestly and clearly represent your campaign may result in a range of actions, from your project being illegible for promotion to account restrictions or even project suspension. But I don't know whether they're going to apply that very strictly to the board game market. So obviously Kickstarter covers a range of products. So where you're talking about fitness equipment or other kind of, physical hardware, it might be talking about renders of that. In the example it uses as a compass, a normal mathematical set compass. Don't have a render of a compass, actually have your actual compass. But with the board game, it might be slightly different. They might kind of allow it.
See, if you're selling a product like that, just like if you're selling, say, miniatures, you're not going to have the actual product yet.
I thought the whole point of having Kickstarter was so you could create the product.
Yeah. So I think that example they've even got on that web on the Kickstarter page is a load of twonk, because that's a cast metal item. So you'd have to have paid for the casting, which is usually the upfront investment cost, which costs you a small fortune, which you go to Kickstarter for.
Yeah, because I mean it's the moulding is probably the single biggest expense of producing miniatures.
Yeah,
the actual mould,
easily
probably by an order of magnitude, if not more.
Yeah, it's a bit of a weird one, because I looked at this and thought I cannot see this being adopted by tabletop games Kickstarters at all.
No,
because it's a practice they've been doing, and also Kickstarter are hardly enforcing their rules currently.
That's true, very true, actually.
Yeah.
Interestingly, actually, a recent Kickstarter which is shipping at present in my general direction, and to a few other people around the world as well, but who cares about those? It's called Barrage, and this is one of the sort of super heavy euros I backed in a moment of madness a few months ago, along with about 6 others, so that was a very pricey month. But there's been a lot of controversy in that campaign. I mean, there is the ever-present risk of what was the term used? Entitled twat rackets. Complaining. But there is a general feeling that the producers of Barrage have kind of skimped, reduced quality here and there, changed a few bits and bobs compared to what they said they were going to along the way. Now, any reasonable person would probably expect a little bit of wiggle because of printing restrictions, timescales, all that sort of thing, and that's fair enough, but there does seem to be a bit of a set of resentment in this particular case that the publishers have been potentially a little bit dishonest in their communication. So I know a man who is frequently associated with this podcast, and I'm not going to name him for the 65th one in a row, has actually played it and has got an advanced copy of it for review and rules explanation purposes, and he has commented that some of the bits in it do seem to be a little lower quality than one would expect. But obviously everyone's view is going to be subjective, so I'm going to have to wait and see what that turns out like. I'm sure it's going to be probably fine, but we shall see, because it wasn't cheap. I think that's probably the bit that stings most people. If you're paying upwards of £100 for something, you're especially for a board game, you're probably going to be expecting something that looks pretty damn pimp.
Good point.
I think that's the issue. It's the fact that it was over £100. If it had been £50, I don't think anyone would have cared.
I was just looking at the Kickstarter rules, because there used to be, I swear, there used to be a Kickstarter rule that you can't run a project until your previous project had finished. But I was trying to look it up to find the wording, and that was the one I'm going to say that Kickstarter seems to be terrible at upholding as it is, but I can't actually find that at the moment, because it was unclear whether it was when your project had finished running as in funding or project had been delivered. So, but that appears to have gone.
I'd imagine it was probably just as in sort of funding rather than running. As in, it was basically, once it's got to the end of its funding bit, presumably you can run another one.
Yeah, I think you can within reason these days. But as we've seen earlier this year, they're kind of clamping down on that as well.
Yeah, well, that was due to people using multiple accounts to do that as well. I think there's something coded in, which means you can't run two projects at the same time.
From the same profile, yeah.
Yes, so from the same profile. So someone was basically making multiple profiles so they could, which is one of the few times I've actually seen them come in and actually cancel a project. So.
Yes, they slapped those wrists well away from the keyboard, didn't they? No, you are not coming back here for a while. Which is good, I think, because, I mean, if it's the company I think it is, aren't they a little remiss in delivering some of their existing campaigns as it stands?
I think, as it stands, if I remember the numbers correctly, they've run 14 campaigns, maybe 15 now, and I think they've only delivered 3 to date. Could be wrong, but it's ballpark those numbers.
Yeah. And obviously that is a bit dodgy, so, I mean, slapping someone's hands away from that is probably reasonable. Of course, it does run the risk that at that point that you're thinking, well, hang on a minute, is this campaign that I'm trying to fund, is that just funding a previous one? So they get into that sort of perpetual cycle where they've underestimated their first project, so they need more projects to try and play catch-up.
Well, to put it into context, all those projects that were cancelled, because we're talking about colossal games at this point, all those projects that cancelled have since been rerun.
Oh, that's a bit cheeky.
And have all fully funded, yeah.
Yeah, so it slowed them down, it didn't stop them.
Wow, okay. Interesting.
Yes, I actually think it was a bit of a press, media boom for them as well, because I think Papillion actually overfunded it funded more than it did the first time it ran.
Yes. Well, I didn't even hear of it the first time. In fact, I hadn't heard of any of those 3 games that got cancelled. And, and we're 3 people who are generally looking at Kickstarter to see what we can talk about. And then controversy came along, and all of a sudden we know about all 3 of these projects. It's like, I
mean, I'd seen Papillion from Instagram. I think I follow the artist or the designer, so I'd seen lots of butterfly pictures around. But yeah, it was one of it wasn't a big one, it wasn't really well known to me, didn't see it many places, but like I said, it's now very, 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 very well funded.
So what's this next on your list?
I did not put that on the list. I'm not saying those words. They're not coming out of my mouth.
The newsroom got broken into by forces unknown.
But Andy Bloody Lewis.
I'm neither confirming nor denying such breaking in. But if you cast your mind back, approximately, God, it must be 12 to 18 months ago, Now, we received an email from a company.
Oh no, this I know which one you're talking about. This was actually about 2 or 3 years ago now. It's quite an old podcast.
Oh God, is it that long? Are we that old?
Yeah.
Oh dear.
Yeah.
I remember actually nearly tripping over the dogs when you first released that podcast. It was so bloody funny. But anyway.
And we were, or rather Steve was, approached by a company who were advertising some products, shall we say. And it turns out that one of these products was a glittery, sparkly butt plug. And whether we'd like to review it. Now, he politely declined, probably for the best. And it turns out was it today, Steve? We've also been contacted by a different company, at least I assume it's a different company, trying to advertise a new kind of superhero for the LGBT community called Stone Dick. And that is genuine.
Oh dear.
We are yet to make a decision on this, but I'm sure whether we take them up, as it were, we'll let you know.
I'm not going to be involved in that review. That's just, count me out.
See, I'm not quite sure what's weirdest now because I didn't mention Did I mention the one about the rapper?
Is that not Parappa the rapper?
No, this would have been about 6 months ago. We obviously didn't. I forgot to mention this on the podcast then. So I had another out of the blue, like unsolicited email. Now, some of them come via a couple of video game companies. So for some reason, we get a lot of video game companies like trying to tout their latest game on Steam, and it's usually like small indie developers. So I saw this email and thought it was going to be another video game one, and usually I just scan through and delete it because I don't know who on earth's got our email address and why they think we're going to cover them, you know. But this was promoting a Japanese pop star had released a new song, and it was just like, okay, this is really, really random. Why have I been sent this? But my curiosity got the better of me, and I watched the YouTube video associated with it.
Did you instantly regret that decision?
Well, let me just explain some aspects of this video, and you can make your own mind up. The Japanese pop star in question is female and about 65.
Oh.
Nice.
And is a rapper.
Of course.
So she's giving it the old hip hop.
Word.
And she's surrounded by what can only be described as the Chippendales, who at one point fire lasers out of their nipples at the Death Star.
Wait, what? Wait, what?
Really? That's not real. That's not real, Steve. You know you've got to put that in the show notes now. You're going to have to hunt that down.
I'm going to find the bloody email about that now, haven't I?
That's amazing.
It'll be on my YouTube history, surely.
That's almost like the Fenbots in Austin Powers.
It's of that kind of quality, yes.
That's amazing. Wow. We totally need to look that up.
Oh, dear. I'm glad you don't send all this shit on to me, Steve, to be honest.
It can be arranged.
No.
Yeah, I can easily do it.
Well, that brings us to the end of the news.
Thank God.
Right, I think we should talk about some games we've been playing, boys.
I think we should, before we go down horrible, horrible rabbit holes.
Too late.
I think we're already knee deep in these rabbit holes. Okay, so we have very, very recently played a game of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell.
A board game of English magic.
Now, this is a game we mentioned back in the UK Games Expo podcast a few episodes back, because we played this at the very end of the show, and we were at a point when we basically were barely staying awake at this point, but somehow managed to scrabble through a few turns, because I think it was the very last game we played at the entire expo, wasn't it?
It was, yeah.
It
3
was.
o'clock on the Sunday afternoon we played it.
Mm-hmm. And I was a grumpy man.
Grumpier.
You were the only one.
That's fair. I can't deny that. I am, yeah.
So we finally sat down and we played a full game of it.
Well, we thought at the time it was pretty, well, a few of us were not impressed at the time, but we thought, well, it's the end of the show, we're all tired, maybe we're not picking it up properly, so we should give it a fair crack of the whip and give it a proper go when we're all in high spirits, awake, coffeeed up, and raring to go.
We were.
So this is the game of the book and film, or book and TV series, of Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell, in which you are trying to improve your magical ability so you can defeat the, what is it, the man with the thistledown hair is the correct terminology for him.
Indeed.
Or the fairy, as we tend to call him, because it's a bit of a gobful saying the man with the thistledown hair every other
Demonstrably so.
Yeah, and you do this by you go around, you soiree around Europe, would be the best way to describe it.
That is exactly the best way to describe it.
Soiree.
You will move around a map of Europe, visiting parties, soirees, dinner parties, balls, and hobnob with the rich and the famous.
Giving it the full Arrakis.
So this will allow you to, this allows you to collect cards. It's like a multi-use card system. So the cards are basically invitations. So you need to go to, say, London. Well, say London, for example. You need to go to, say, Vienna, and then you play the Vienna card, which will allow you to have this party, which will allow you to either pick up more cards, of which there are a variety of different ones, or to improve your standing in society, which is a little track at the bottom of the board. But the main thing you're trying to do is you're trying to cast spells, and these spells are cards with a newspaper description of what they do, and then they've got a number of different symbols, of elemental symbols. I think there's 5 elements.
I think there's 6, if I remember, because the top 3 spots on your little silver dish has a pair, and each one is, none of them are repeated.
I think there is 6. Yes, you know, birds, wind, rain, rocks, hills, and something else.
Trees.
There you go.
So what you're trying to do really is spend these cards, because each one of these cards will have one of these symbols in the top left-hand corner, and spend these cards to put these tokens onto your spells. Once your spell is filled up with the required tokens, you then pronounce the magical spell you've done, and you earn that many victory points, which you then keep down and keep secret in front of you. At particular points in the game, on certain turns, you can then challenge the man with the fairy. And to do that, you just basically say, right, I'm going to challenge him, and you have to have more victory points than the fairy's current strength. His strength being randomly determined by the draw of this deck, like a tarot deck, isn't it? Basically.
It's the Cards of Marcel's, I believe it's called. But yeah, tarot deck.
If one of the players at this point has enough power or enough victory points to defeat the fairy, then you all win, but the person who has the most has won the game.
Yes, yeah. Yeah, whoever defeats the fairy, and that ends the game immediately. And then whoever has the most victory points or most magicianship is the winner overall.
Yes.
And it also works in that if you don't defeat the fairy by the end of the game, you all lose.
I think you could probably work out who is the least loser by who's got the most victory points at that point, but it seems kind of moot.
Really, what this game is, it's a little bit pandemic-y in a way.
Yeah.
It reminded me of that, because you're moving around places, you're playing cards to do things, which means you're trying to get certain characteristics in order to put on your little spell board.
Yeah, you're kind of collecting sets of, in this case, tokens as opposed to colours. But yeah, you've got to go to this certain city to be able to do this certain action. Yeah, there are some big similarities in there, but there's some big differences.
Yes. And some big problems.
I wondered when we were going to broach this. Yes.
Well, you two are dancing around the subject. Dancey.
I'll have you know, we were soireeing around the subject.
But you're basically circling the drain. Let's be honest, it was not enjoyable.
Yeah.
Yeah, if we're being honest, yes, you are entirely correct.
I was going to say it's shit, but I think that's probably a little harsh, because it does have its merits. It is very pretty.
It is. Ian O'Toole's done a fantastic job.
And it's quite easy to play in the sense that you draw some cards, play some cards, next person.
I think mechanically it's easy to play, but yes. I think to actually play it well, as
it is not.
We didn't, quite spectacularly, I don't think it is that easy to play in that regard.
No, indeed, yes, that's basically what I mean. Mechanically, it's straightforward. I would say tactically, but I'm not convinced there are any tactics, for reasons I will go into.
But I think, yeah, as you said, tactically, it's quite difficult because it does have these similarities to Pandemic in the fact that you're all trying to collectively defeat this fairy, but you can't ever help somebody, or you can't even hinder it. You can't, no player interaction whatsoever. It's just you on your Todd trying to cast spells and do stuff, and you either do it or you don't. And there's kind of no variability in that.
No, indeed. I mean, the biggest problem that we all found, I think, is that we couldn't really find a way to catch him because the newspaper articles are basically the spells, the feats of wonder that you end up performing. Feats of magic, yes, that you end up performing cost somewhere between 2 and 4 of these elements, and each one requires a card. And you can only have 5 cards from one round to the next. Now, you can draw during your round, so that's less of an issue. But you're at the mercy of the deck depending on which spells you can cast, so the elements you get. You're at the mercy of the tarot deck, which determines which elements are permitted to be cast.
Which is a massive hindrance.
It is. It's horrible.
Really big pain in the ass. And I'm all for a game kind of imposing restrictions, you know, so you have to kind of be creative with your solutions. I mean, essentially that's what all board gaming is. But that deck was a bitch.
Yes. And more than what, I mean, the worst bit about it was, as Steve pointed out, I think it would be massively alleviated by the fact that if you could see what the next card was. So you could actually do some planning, because without knowing what's coming next, you don't know if the cards already in your hand are any good next time or not. So you're very, very at the mercy of the deck, and because of that, it was just an exercise in frustration more than anything else. He's thinking, right, next time I'm going to try and play 4 cards because they're all the same, or they all match these symbols. I'll get myself 5 points, job done. Card comes out, you can't cast a goddamn thing. So you kind of waste your turn, at which point the man with the thistledown hair moves on 4 spaces.
16 points, yeah.
Yes, exactly. And all of a sudden you're like, I can't catch him. I mean, we got to the point a couple of turns from the end where we looked at the market where you get these cards and went, do you know what? Even if I was ahead at this point, not by much, admittedly, but even if I got all of those cards, somehow managed to cast all of the elements into them and get all of those victory points, I'd still be 5 points behind the bastard.
Yeah.
I found this game really, really weird. I stewed on this game all the drive home. It's about an hour's drive from Andy's to mine. And I stewed on this. This wasn't the only game we played that day. We'll mention the other game later. But I really did I just couldn't stop thinking about this bloody game all the way home.
Really?
And not in the good way. Not in the good way of like, oh yeah, I want to play it again and solve the puzzle. Or, I want to play again and work better. It was like, what the devil was someone designing this thinking?
Yes. No, I was the same, because I've been thinking, do I want to play it again? I kind of want to, because the stubborn part of me wants to defeat it.
Yeah, no, I know exactly what you mean. I feel exactly the same way. I feel as if, like, I know a little bit more now that I might have a better chance of defeating the game. But my gut says that it's not going to be any different.
I thought it was very interesting. As we were packing up the game, you, Steve, took out all the cards and you actually kind of did a card count to see how the fairy progresses in power, and you also did a card count of, what was it, the feats of magic, to work out what the averages were. And that's quite an unusual thing to do after playing a game.
Well, no, because it works out. It makes you can kind of plan your strategy, but I don't think there is a strategy in this thing. You're wholly at the mercy of 4 decks, but it does give you an idea of where you, kind of a barometer of how many tokens you need to start firing out each turn. And it turns out, we worked out that on average, statistically, it's about 3.
Yeah.
Which is a lot.
It was a binomial distribution as well, because I even stacked the cards on top of each other.
You did.
And the 3 was at the peak, where there was more 3s than any other, and I was very impressed. It followed proper binomial statistics curve.
And 3 was at the peak.
We also realised that because there's one card, I think, where the fairy gains 6 points of magic. It increases in outrageous. 6 dark magic.
Yeah.
And I think we worked out that if the fairy gets that card early on, you are pretty much stuffed.
Yes.
If that card comes out early and it's a random deck of cards, there's no way you're going to catch up with that.
No.
And ironically, I think if you'd have got the other end, so there was a card of 0 1, I think, and there was a 1 and a 2. If the first 3 cards that came out were 0, 1, and 2, the game would be over in the first time you can fight the fairy.
But having said that, the card that was 0 and 1, because each of these tarot cards has either 1 or 2 elements that can be cast. The most powerful and the weakest ones for the fairy are also the most limiting ones for the players. So if it comes out with 0, it's only going to have, I don't know, I'd say trees on it. If you've got feats of magic which don't have trees on, There's nothing you can do. You can't take advantage of the fact that the fairy's at a weak moment because
No.
you're limited by the magical spells that you've got in front of you, and by the cards you've got in your hand, and by this tarot deck.
Mm-hmm.
And there's only a limited amount of mitigation you can perform because you choose one of the actions in your little thing that allows you to cast 2 of the other elements. But again, as you say, Rory, if you don't have either the elements on the feats that you have, or you don't have the cards to be able to play the damn thing, you're boned.
I felt the game wanted you to work towards your next turn.
Yeah.
So what you needed to do was collect these cards and spells that would allow you on your next turn to use your action, because we haven't mentioned the action. There's this little action selection thing at the beginning of every round where you pick one of 6 actions, or you can deselect. So you can only select each action once, or you can reset it as an action. And one of these actions, or 3 of these actions, were basically to play pairs of these elements. So basically it allowed you to play elements when the tarot deck wasn't allowing you to do that. And one of the things I thought on the way back was what you really need to be doing was thinking about, right, well, next turn I can cast clouds. That spell needs clouds. I need to go grab that, and I need to go, or I've got 5 clouds in my hand. I need to take advantage of that on the next round. Now, this is me talking in hindsight.
Yes.
While we were actually playing, I had at least 2 turns when I did nothing.
Yeah.
Absolutely nothing, because everything has to fall into place. Because all the cards have to be spent at a location. So in order to get more cards to increase your chances of casting spells, you need to go to these locations and cash them in.
Yeah.
And I was like, where was that? I think I was in Paris. So I was roughly in the middle of the map.
Oh, yeah.
And I basically had Newcastle and Venice, which are the 2 furthest points away from me and diametrically opposed corners of the map. And I couldn't get to either of them, even though I'd upgraded my movement speed as my character option.
Yeah.
So I only had 2 cards in my hand for these 2 locations. So basically all I could do was move somewhere, so maybe next turn I'd be in a better position to play one of these cards.
And there's the thing is, you could also use, I mean, if you're in that situation, you could always use those cards for a spell if you were allowed to cast that spell that turn.
Yes.
And if you actually needed to cast that spell that turn. It's all very good having trees in your hand. Well, I can cast trees and it's a tree's turn, but I don't actually have any. I've already done trees. I've already filled all my spots.
Yeah, exactly.
Right.
And it's just mad. So, I mean, even if you went into a round with 5 cards, you think, right, I want to cast them. The tarot card comes out. You're boned. Fine, great. I'm in the arsehole of nowhere. I need 4 more cards so I can play 2 cards and move twice. Can't get to the places I need to be able to get the cards. And I need to be able to put down at least 3 cards this turn and carry over 5 cards for the next turn in order to be able to basically keep up with Elfario. It's the chances of all of this happening for 10 turns are just pretty much none.
I do think that we weren't playing especially optimally, though, regarding the prestige track. See, at the bottom of the board, there's a prestige track, and that essentially dictates how your turn order, for one thing, but you get certain points on that board and you unlock new special abilities. You're only going to unlock 4 of, I think, 6 or 8. So one of them's like improving your speed. One of them's just some victory points. One of them is giving you extra cards. I think we were doing quite well on that track, and I do feel it was almost a waste. I just want to race up to the, 8, whatever it is, unlock my first one, which I think we all agreed was going to be the connections or the advisor, which gives you the bonus card at the beginning of your turn.
Yeah, I think that's pretty much mandatory.
I don't care about these cards anymore. If I get, next time I get a person, an invite to go meet, Winston Churchill, not Winston Churchill, another character that was around in the 18th century.
Lord Byron.
Yeah, Lord Byron, right? I'm just going to dark it off. I don't care. I'm going to use him as a spell.
I actually did think, and this is me stewing on the way home, what was the point of that track at all?
It's a good question. I wondered the same thing because, as Rory says, I think it's almost like it puts the game on rails because you need that extra card at the start of your turn. You need the other ability to get the card at the end of your turn so you can plan for the next turn.
Yeah.
So that basically that's the first 2 steps on the prestige track. The other two steps are so far up that prestige track, they're almost not worth bothering with. Because at which point you're trying to get some of these cards out. Exactly. Who the hell's going to get that far? Because you're trying to get all of these cards out and cast spells to keep up with the fairy. It's almost, you might as well just knock it on there and not bother.
Well, the other question is, what was the point in the turn order?
Well, I think
that's a good question.
The only point to being further along on that track, and the only point in the turn order changing, so it's whoever is the furthest along, and if you're on the same spot as somebody else, if you get there after them, you go first next turn, is so that if you were playing well and you were powerful enough, you could defeat the fairy before somebody else.
Was that it?
That's it. Because if you defeat the fairy, Steve, you end the game and you're in control of ending the game. And if I go after you and I'm only 2 points behind you and I was about to cast this spell and overtake you, then you win.
Right, okay.
But since we were nowhere near defeating the fairy, I mean, we got to the point where we put our markers down on the victory point track because we was like, where is everybody? Just out of point of interest, how shit are we all doing? And we were all doing really shit. That's the only reason to be up front. Because I was like, there's no player interaction, so you can't do anything to affect my turn other than maybe steal a book before me or steal a feat of magic that I've got my eye on. But it's not really that important.
Here's my theory about this game.
Yes.
You mentioned there's no player interaction.
Mm-hmm.
You've mentioned that there doesn't seem to be any point in where you are on this victory point track, really.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is a solo game.
I was thinking that on my cycle to work the other day. I could quite easily play this solo it as 4 players, and I'd still have as much kind of enjoyment and take as much away from the game as I would if I played with 3 other people.
Well, yeah, you could play this game completely solo and just, I mean, quite literally do it solo. You don't need any of the other players on the board at all.
No.
Because they don't do anything, you don't interact with each other. Yet, for some reason, according to the official information, this game is not to be played solo.
What?
It's a 2 to 4 player game.
Hey, the only interaction you get is either snaffling one of the feat cards before anyone else, or snaffling one of the little books that gives you a 1-time per turn action.
Or the spells,
ability.
yeah, that's it. It's
that's
spells,
it. And even
and
that's not crippling.
No.
Yeah, because you can't even call this game a co-op game because you're not working together. You're trying to be the first to beat the fairy.
No. There's even less interaction than there is in Scythe, for crying out loud.
That's a very valid point.
It is. I mean, Scythe is not well known for its interaction. There's a little bit if you start getting a bit tasty with your tractors, but other than that, there really isn't much interaction. It's a very much solo game. Jonathan Strange and Mr. Norrell is even more isolated than that. There is literally none. You can share spaces. You don't fight each other. You don't get in the way. You just go wherever you want, do your own thing, and everybody loses.
Yeah. And I think for me, this was probably the most, I was going to say disappointing part about this game. Having read the book, there is so much interaction, and I was expecting a lot of that because a lot of the book is about the characters kind of, slandering each other politely and, kind of that Georgian culture of just kind of really getting in each other's way, really putting a spanner in the works for each other. And that isn't in the game at all.
No, you commented this at the end, actually. It's like just playing the little tokens doesn't feel like you're actually producing magic.
No, I mean, we're actually almost spitballing kind of how we'd house rule it to make it different. We say about how like you get the invites, and the invites would be almost like a market row, so you all have to go to those locations, and if you have the most prestige, you get the lion's share of the bounty of whatever that location is. We were thinking about other ways to play this game whilst we were playing it. It just didn't keep me in it.
No, and you were quite favourable towards it after we played it at Expo as well, which is an interesting development. I've
really, my first impression to my second impression of this game, I've completely flipped.
See, my gut instinct is always right.
I wouldn't agree with that, Andy. But
well, maybe you should.
But no, I'm going to try it again. I'm going to give it a go solo, and I'm going to see how it plays at a 2-player as well, just to see.
Yeah, it's a good idea just to see, because you might. Well, I guess it probably won't make any difference statistically because you just rifle the decks again. But to me, it's almost like the same problem as Betrayal at House on the Hill has, and we all know my opinion on that game, that it's a really nice idea. Because, you know, running around a haunted mansion or exploring, you know, and taking on a magician and building up your magical power all sounds really interesting and cool. You know, who doesn't want to cast magic? Who doesn't want to run around a haunted house and find a beastie? You know, they sound fantastic fun. But both of these games have been executed with such incompetence that it just becomes an exercise in boredom and frustration. So, no.
I wanted to like this as well.
Yeah, I really want to like this game.
I was really hoping my experience at Expo was due to me being thoroughly banjaxed.
Yes.
But it appears that even due to the veil of tiredness, I could see through and unfortunately saw that this was a problem.
Yes. So, yeah, not one that I think we'll be pursuing any further. I look forward to your reports to see if it's any better or worse than with 1 or 2 players, Rory. That'll be vaguely interesting, but...
I think when I play a game with another person, at least one other person, I'm probably going to have to coach them through how we think we should play. Because I think it might just have a really, really steep learning curve, this game, and I don't want to have a runaway victory with it, although that's highly unlikely. But I want to make sure that I'm playing it the way we think the game is meant to be played, and I want my opponent to be able to do the same. So we have some conflict, at least when, you know, points, and then trying to race to see who can be first to beat the magician, the fairy. But we'll see.
Here's the possible issue I foresee. At the moment, it's a puzzle.
Right.
It's a puzzle, and how do I burn through these spell cards as quickly as possible to beat this bastard fairy?
Yes.
Once you solve that puzzle, how fun's that game going to be?
None. Well, given that it's not fun already, none.
Yeah, I'm going to say less than 75%.
Let's see what happens if you beat this fairy then in your next go. But my first impressions of this game, well, first impressions, 2 impressions, I've played it twice now. My impression of this game is it's a bit weird.
Yeah.
Yes, it's flirting with the entry on my brown list for this year. Well, you know, you've got a good list and a bad list.
Moving on, we also played another game.
Yes, moving quickly on.
Have you not heard of that principle? That a lot of, or some companies certainly have grades of client. Now, of course, all customers are equal, but some are more equal than others.
Right.
And anyone who thinks otherwise is massively naive, because, you know, the customers that come to you and spend bajillions of dollars are obviously going to get preferential treatment. It's the way the world works. But there are some companies I've heard of out there who have sort of gold, silver, and bronze clients, and then brown clients.
Oh, lead is the term I heard.
Lead, that's right.
Because they're dragging you down.
Basically, yeah, you know, they cost you a lot of money. You know, they'll only pay a small amount there. And there are some there was at least one company, and I'm not going to name it, that I'm aware of that certainly used to almost actively filter the wait queue when you rang up. They basically put you in an ordered queue, and if you were a gold client, you'd be, you know, you've got a 2-minute wait or whatever it is. If you were on the brown list, then you were sort of kicked down to the 45-minute wait time, because the hope was that you'd get so fed up that you think, well, screw this, I'm going somewhere else. And it's just an active thing, so there you go.
Yeah, I've heard this as well. I've heard this is actually true, yeah. So if you're on the phone to customer services and you get straight through, that means you're a gold or even platinum customer. Whereas if you're in a queue for, like, especially this is a mobile phone company, so you're usually phoning from your mobile phone, so they know, you know, that phone number is linked to the status of that account.
Yes.
And so if you're stuck in a queue for like an hour or something like that, it means that you are officially costing them money, and they don't want your custom.
Right. Good to know. I spent 20 minutes on hold the other day trying to upgrade my internet.
Oh dear.
So I'm definitely not gold.
What you should do is stay with them and cost them money out of spite.
Maybe I'll phone up and speak to technical services every other day as well.
Yes.
Yeah.
So basically, yes, I now have a brown list. Sorry, a lead list, whatever. Brown list.
Brown list actually sounds better.
Yes.
So we played another game.
We did.
Well, this was a prototype of an expansion.
Indeed.
An upcoming Kickstarter, which I think will actually be live by the time we post this.
That makes us almost sound ahead of the game, which is very rare.
Yep.
So this is we played 1/3 of the new expansion for Dice Hospital.
Community Care is the name of the expansion, the name of the campaign. And we played the maternity expansion with its lovely pink dice and its little baby dice.
Yes. Now, I played the first of the 3 expansions at Expo. So we've now played, I think it's 2/3 of it between the 3 of us. There is a third modular expansion to this, which is the hard one, apparently.
The Improvements expansion.
Oh,
Sorry,
yes.
I just dashed and got my rules so I could name it properly.
The first one was basically running around the city, picking up dice and putting them in your ambulance rather than just picking an ambulance. So you're almost dice drafting in a roundabout kind of way. I'm not entirely convinced it works, if I'm honest, but it's not that it didn't work, it just seemed a bit more faffy for the same thing.
From what I understand, since the expo and the lot of feedback that the team got during that, it has been further developed and further improved ahead of this.
Excellent.
So I fully intend to give that expansion and the Improvements expansion a razz over the next few days.
However...
But we did all play the maternity, yes. So
yes. This is an expansion where you have essentially a maternity wing to your hospital. So you can add, you can take in expectant mothers who come into your hospital and cause, based on our experience, a lot of chaos. They, as you would expect, babies can't be separated from their mothers. So instead of 1 die hanging around, you've got at least 2. So when a mother comes into the hospital, you have to roll the dice to determine whether she has 1 baby or 2. And because they can't be separated, they all have to be discharged at the same time, which is extremely difficult because it means you've got to save up all your actions to only act on these dice, almost possibly to the expense of the regular patients that are part of the normal game. So you've got to be very, very clever and very careful as to how you perform your actions. Now, the overall mechanics of the game are exactly the same. You know, you put people in rooms and they'll do their thing. But in this expansion, you also have some very specific maternity actions. You've got additional wards, you've got midwives who do various things as specialists, and all of this is obviously to help build your engine to actually deal with the influx of mothers and their spawn.
Paternal instinct kicking in there, Andy. Again.
Absolutely, yes. As you can imagine, I'm such a child-friendly person.
You're invited to my daughter's naming day as well. Can you please refrain from calling her my spawn for that day?
I will absolutely not.
So I have warned Kira.
You know, I went camping over the weekend actually, and one of our friends' children was there, and I tried so hard to be child friendly. I even tried to give it some cheese. I say it, he, some cheese. And you know, try to interact with him, and I gave up after about 10 minutes and decided no, this is not for me. I'll let the professionals deal with it.
Dear God.
I gave it some cheese. That's just
like as if it was a pet rat or something.
Well, it seems to have the same interaction as one of my cats. Right. Basically, all it's interested is running around and eating.
All right. Note to self: don't let Andy anywhere near my kids.
Andy has no interest in being anywhere near your kids. You're quite safe.
Good. Well, it won't hurt that we're both on that job. So, all right.
Broadly speaking, the mechanics are the same. You choose an ambulance, you pick an upgrade, you pick a specialist, whatever you want, and then everyone does their thing on their board as per the regular game. So far, so sort of standard. But the difference is here is really the introduction of these mothers is absolutely chaotic, because ideally you want to keep them in a ward to themselves so they don't, not degrade, what's the word? Neglect. They don't suffer from neglect, because mothers aren't sick, they're just encumbered.
Encumbered.
But the rule is if you leave them in a ward with a sick patient, they basically catch the disease of the patient and become more ill.
Yes.
Yes.
So you want them in a ward completely on their own.
Yes.
But you'll quickly find that you don't have the room to do that kind of thing.
No, indeed.
Quite often you're then playing this game, and it's not only just a case of getting the mothers and the babies out, it's getting all the other bloody patients out, so your mothers take less care, so you just to buy yourself some breathing space, just booting other people out the door as quickly as you can.
At first, I thought this game, this expansion, made the game more complicated. And it does, because you've got basically another set of plates spinning that you have to try and, make sure they don't fall over and crash to the ground. And I must admit, the last time I played Dice Hospital before this, I managed to get absolutely no patient deaths, where in this game I think I had 3 or 4 patient deaths.
And we all had
no mothers
or
or
2.
babies.
Yeah,
that's an important point. Mothers and babies can't die. In fact, babies don't even deteriorate. So they actually sit in like the pediatric ward, which is a chevron which sits underneath the main player board. They go in there on a 4 and they never go down. So all you've got, in theory, it's quite easy. All you've got to do is just pip them up and look after the mother. But yeah, they can't die, which is nice.
I realised something interesting about this game in that although it is a lot more complicated with all these additional things, I think it improved my efficiency. It made something in my brain click and I had to work harder, because I swear that's my best score in Dice Hospital I've ever had.
Really?
It was definitely not mine. I did so badly.
Because the other thing this game introduces is the maternity mission cards. I'm not entirely sure what the technical term for them are. So in the one we played, there's a series of them. In the one we played, we were trying to discharge a mother and babies plus a pair of matching colours. If you did that, then you essentially got 1 tick on this mission card. And the more ticks you had, the further along on that you were, the more bonus points you got. And so if that was your best score you ever had, and you didn't even get the most bonus points from that, Alora scored first on that, didn't she?
Yeah.
I only managed to get 2.
2, yeah. So I think you picked up 5 points.
Yeah,
5 bonus points. But yeah, you stomped them on all of us.
Oh.
Yeah. Now, one of the reasons I managed to do that is when I was getting the upgrades, I was getting the maternity upgrades, and because you have to always send a mother and baby die out at the same time, you have to discharge them as a pair. It means you've always got at least 2 dice.
Yeah.
So rather than the base game, when it comes to, especially early on in the game, where you might only get get 1 or 2 out, the maternity expansion means you had to get at least 2 out. And if you want to get 2 mothers and babies out, well, then you would have to get at least 4 out, possibly even 6 die if you were getting if the mothers had twins or something like that.
Yeah.
So I thought that in a way, because I was concentrating on the mothers and babies and using the additional dice actions off the maternity units I had to heal non-babies and non-mother child dice, actually meant that I was getting some turns I think I got 6 dice out of 1 turn, which is really impressive for me. No,
you did really well. I mean, at one point I got 5 out, and I think that's the most I've ever done, because I'm shit at this game. But I got 5 out at one point, and I saw that as a mark of personal pride that I did that. Really good. I mean, the other interesting, I really like this expansion, because the other thing it did, some of the rooms and some of the midwives allowed you to temporarily change the colour of other dice in your ward.
Yes. It was almost like an ongoing blood bag, because that's the ability of one of the abilities of the blood bag as well. Now, I have to admit, I didn't personally make use of it, but I'm not going to hold my hand up and say I'm particularly good at these kinds of games. So that's not a criticism of the game. That's just me being shit.
No, I think you're right. It does make the game more complicated, but I think at the same time it makes it a richer experience.
Definitely.
There's more ingredients in this mixing pot, but the overall dish at the end of it is a lot better for it.
I did notice, actually. I think I didn't, just as a point of tactics, I noticed that the people who did well in this game, so Steve and Alora basically, or better, a lot better than me anyway, they seem to focus on picking up specialists as their upgrades rather than rooms, whereas I focused on rooms. And I think that was to my detriment, because I found basically I couldn't perform enough actions, because a lot of the rooms, the regular rooms, certainly in the hospital, can't act on the maternity patients. They're just the regular ones. Whereas obviously you need the specific midwife or maternity wards in order to perform actions on the babies and the mothers. So if you don't get those, then you're kind of boned. So that's pretty much where I went wrong. And I genuinely think the fact that I had fewer meeples really detrimented me there. So I think there's more of a grab for the specialists during the upgrades. At least that's how it appeared in our game.
Because I had tons of specialists, mainly because you bastards kept taking all the rooms I wanted. But I felt I always had lots of ways to do things. I just wasn't always able to do the things I wanted. Because like I said, I didn't pick up a single maternity room, because I found that I was quite often going last or near last in that game because of Andy and Alora always taking the low level ambulances, which it worked for you guys, but.
No, it didn't.
No, it didn't.
Well, that's it. Okay, it really worked for Laura because I think Laura was quite often second.
Yes.
But it's neither here nor there, is it? Really? I'm going to get you next time, Lewis.
Shakes fist at air. Kick harder, boy.
But on the basis of that, I'm really interested to see what this next one, because I've played the city one as well, but I played that at Dragon Meet last year, so I know I played a really, really early version that's changed quite a bit.
Okay, right.
But yeah, the improvements one is apparently the hard version, which adds a more worker placement aspect to it, where you're training staff up and you're making the people you've got better. I think.
Okay.
I haven't even read the rules yet, but that's the gist I get of it.
Okay, that's interesting. Well, I did mention I'd be possibly not backing this. I'll see how it goes, because I do like Dice Hospital, and it's one of the games that we would play in our Bewley group quite a lot, because it is relatively straightforward mechanically, although it does bake some brains. But it's relatively fast-ish, and it's easy to teach. But I don't know if I'm A, good enough, and B, play it often enough to actually warrant the expansion. But I'm sure the completionist within me will completely override that and go, yes, I'm buying it.
I mean, that's the point. We did say that on the Sunday when we were playing it. It's a really good expansion, but it really takes the game up another notch. So if you are, like me, shit at Dice Hospital, you might want to get better at it before you consider.
I think that's a fair yes, because it is a step change in difficulty. Also, the price of the game is, I'm not going to say that it's overly expensive for what you get. It's comparatively priced to sort of other games of similar ilk. But we did find that the Kickstarter isn't much cheaper, if any, than the off-the-shelf version.
Oh, really?
That happened with the first one, because Andy backed the original Dice Hospital on Kickstarter. I bought it in retail.
Okay.
Actually, I bought it on retail after playing John's copy at Aircon.
Yes.
Because Amanda played it and went, we're leaving here with Dice Hospital, and we're leaving here with the little plastic ambulances. So we went and bought, from one of the stands in Aircon, Dice Hospital and the add-on pack, which gives you all the little, well, you can't call them Kickstarter exclusives because they weren't exclusive, because that's why I bought them, but all the Kickstarter stuff. And yeah, I went back and looked at how much the Kickstarter for Dice Hospital cost, and I actually think, especially, I don't know, did you have to pay additional postage, Andy?
Yes. Postage wasn't included.
So yes, I definitely paid less than Andy.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So there is I mean, we know why, but Cesar's giving us a good reason why, but it does feel a bit, why should I bother? Why don't I just wait?
Yeah.
I will need a good reason, I think. It's not because it's bad, just because, I think the lack of incentive sits there in the back of my mind now.
But that's becoming a bit of a problem with a lot of Kickstarters for me now, and I think it's the same for you, isn't it, Rory? Because you don't back anything on Kickstarter at the moment, do you?
With the exception of this morning, no, I haven't backed anything for a little while.
This morning? Well, what did you back this morning?
On the Underground.
Oh!
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm toying with going for that as well, because we saw that at Expo, and we spoke to Ludi Creations, and it does look good, I have to admit. It's lovely.
I was thinking of backing Super Fantasy Brawl, and it was a 7-day Kickstarter.
Hey?
So,
yeah, it's almost finished now, in fact, or will be. Yeah. But by the time we finish recording, it should be over.
And I thought, well, I'm going to have to wait for that for retail now if I want that. But then Kickstarter grassed up Adam, so I know Adam's backing it, so I can get to play a copy. But annoyingly, I got the message, the email to say, don't forget to back the Age of Endeavour expansion.
Oh,
and I went into Kickstarter and went, oh, that was a 7-day Kickstarter as well, so I've now missed that opportunity.
Oh, goddamn.
Oh, bugger.
That's a shame, because I was considering looking at that and thinking, well, maybe they'll do the reprint of the original and add the expansion too, because I really like Age of Sail. It's fantastic.
You don't actually need... So if you get the expansion for Age of Sail, if you're one of the people that are fortunate enough to back it, you just take out the original tray that comes in, the game trays, because the expansion is double-sided. So you just drop in the new one, and you've got the expansion and the original all in one box.
Oh, no, that is nice.
Yeah.
Oh.
Now, why didn't you tell me that last week when I could have backed the bloody thing?
Yeah,
Steve.
Rory.
Well, Steve and Andy, it was in last week's Kickstarter highlights that was on the website, polyhedroncollider.com.
That,
Just saying.
Which I proofread.
as did I. Yeah, well.
Because in my defence, I didn't realise it was a 7-day Kickstarter. I thought I've got another couple of weeks to back this.
Do you know what?
exactly.
I will take that on as useful criticism, and I will add the closing date to the page from here on out.
Ooh,
That is a good idea.
Well, it was your idea, guys.
We're full of good ideas.
We're full of something.
Sunshine and Roses.
That was the Dice Hospital expansion, which we played 1/3 of it. I really, really enjoyed it. I thought it was really clever. As you said, added another layer of complexity to Dice Hospital, which I'm not quite sure our brains need. But I will be getting it one way or another. I think I'll be getting this.
Agreed.
Whether I wait for retail or get a Kickstarter, I don't know yet.
Yeah, I'll definitely be buying it at some point.
One game we forgot to mention when we were talking about Expo, and the reason I brought it up now is because pre-orders have opened on the Portal website.
They have.
At the UK Games Expo, me and Rory got a chance to play Imperial Settlers Raiders of the North game. Now, this is not an expansion. This is a completely standalone new game.
Was it an expandalone?
No, it's not even an expandalone. It's a completely new game.
Okay. H.
Yeah. It's Empires of the North, actually.
Empires of the North. Sorry. Somebody didn't correct the show notes. I blame them. So this is, it's a completely new game, but it uses a lot of Imperial Settlers DNA, shall we say. So there's a lot of aspects that are in Imperial Settlers are in this. So it's still got the little cutesy artwork of little tiny people doing odds and sods. It's got the same resources. So your apple, your wood, your gold coins, that kind of thing. And you've got your workers as well, your little pink men. But what this does is it changes a couple of things quite drastically, which I don't want to spoil it, but in my opinion, vastly improve Imperial Settlers.
Yeah.
Oh, really?
Yeah, so the aim of this is Imperial Settlers covers basically like all kinds of civilizations. There's Egyptians in it, there's Japanese are in it, the Britons are in it, that kind of thing. What this game does is this game concentrates on being around, well, funnily enough, the North Sea, hence Empires of the North. So you're all kind of variations of Vikings.
So you've got Vikings, Inuits, and Scottish.
One of the things you're doing is there's an extra board in this where you go basically raiding and pillaging. So you can either go raiding, which is like a nice way of doing it. You don't affect someone else. So you have to send a boat off and you can get anything that's on the left-hand side, or you can go pillaging, which means you have to spend more resources, which gets you things on the right-hand side, which are generally better resources.
Yeah, so they have like nearby islands, because the idea is that you're essentially all on these kind of like poxy little islands. So you've got nearby islands and distant lands, I think it's called.
Yes, that was it. Sorry.
Yeah, so if you want to go to the distant lands, you need to put some fish on your boat so that they've got something to eat as they go further away. But it's what you can get is much better.
Now, the other main difference between this and normal Imperial Settlers is the way the turn structure works. So you've got a little worker placement thing for starters.
Hello.
So you've got this little ring which allows you to place actions, but you can use one of your workers, and that's one of your actions. Or you can activate one of your cards, which is one of your actions. And you get 2 workers, don't you? Sorry, yeah. So you don't get a lot of workers.
Yeah, I thought they were called... They're not called workers. I think they're called commands.
Yes.
Because they work slightly differently to your normal workers. But yeah, carry on.
You can also do on your turn is you can either take one of these commands, or you can take an action on your board, which usually involves spending one of your workers in some way, your little pink workers. So it's not worker placement, they're more kind of a resource spending. But the major difference between this and the normal Imperial Settlers is you take turns taking actions.
Thought you said you were going to take turns taking turns then.
Well, yeah. That makes sense. Because in the original Imperial Settlers, you play over, I think, 4 rounds. And when it comes to your round, you basically do everything you can.
Right.
Which is my big criticism of the original Imperial Settlers, because when you get in the 3rd and 4th round, the other players might as well go make a cup of tea or something like that, because you can combo so many actions and so many sequences. This will get me more apples. I spend more apples to get more gold. I spend more apples of my gold to do this, which gets me this victory point. I then spend less to do that, to do this, to do that, to do this, to do that. And you can sequence these long sequence of things one after another. That same sequencing is in Empires of the North, but it happens sequentially. So you're flipping back and forth, so you don't get this horrible downtime.
Okay.
Where one person just spends 20 minutes doing their entire turn. Instead, you get this constant thing. And because of the actual raiding section, as you said, when you get the nearby islands and the further away islands, the order in which you activate that affects what cards you have. So there's a little bit of element of, well, you need to do certain actions by certain times. And then there was another element to do with this central commands that had something similar, wasn't it? You could...
Yeah, so you're talking about this little wheel of the 5 options.
Yeah.
On there, you've got a few ways to kind of mitigate some of the look of the draw. So one of them allows you to draw an extra card and put it into your hand, because at the beginning of the game, you draw 4 cards from your unique deck. But if you want to keep any of them, you've got to spend your little pink workers to keep them into your hand. But obviously, if you spend them, then you're going to have less actions in your actual turn. So yeah, you could draw an extra card. You could gain an extra worker, little worker dude. You could construct something. You could build one of your cards for free. You could set sail, which is go off on the expedition board. And you could do something else. Harvest. That's it. You could harvest, so you could reap the rewards of one of your cards. So, which is the other big difference between this and Imperial Settlers. So in normal Imperial Settlers, any resources that you've generated in your turn and have not used, you clear away. But in Empires of the North, you keep, because it's one of the really interesting parts about this game is making sure that you're planning for the next turn and the next, particularly the whole extra. It's the next turn, I'm going to say. Because these little workers that Steve mentioned, you've only got 2. You've got 5 potential actions you've got on this command wheel.
Right.
And you can kind of intermix which one you're going to do, whether you're going to do this command wheel or your kind of empire or your kind of your tableau actions. But you only get to use each one once unless you pay an apple, in which case you can use it again. But if you're going to use it again, it can only go to an adjacent empty command action.
That was it, yeah.
Oh.
So what you end up doing, you're trying to go, right, and of course with the sailing, it's in order of who sets sail first. So you go, right, I want to put a fish on this ship and I want to get that ship out onto the sea so I can go to the distant lands and get that card because I want that card and I'm going to add it to my kind of empire. But I need to make sure, but I haven't got any fish, so I need to harvest my fish and then I need to set sail, but I don't want to waste both workers, both command points doing that. I want to use the same one because they're right next to each other, which means I need an apple. So you need to, it's working out all these different steps between this command wheel and your empire and this other little expedition board. And I need to do all of that before Steve sends his ship up there, if Steve's even going to send his ship up there.
Oh, right, okay.
And the irony is, I didn't.
No, you didn't.
So basically, every single clan or group is completely different and has slightly different ways in which they work. So I was playing the Scots clan, which means I got drunk.
Yeah.
Which basically meant that if I sent my workers to certain spots, my worker would stay there because he had a hangover. And even the card art was covered in these like little Scotsmen like pissed up and asleep against the wall.
Whereas I had the Vikings, so I was going, right, let's get out to sea. And this mad rush to get out to sea. And I had all these abilities which would allow me to kind of overtake Steve if he was on the boat. And he just never went.
Went to the pub.
It's a good policy.
For the whole thing to blow over.
Yes. That sounds interesting. So clever worker placement implementation then, it sounds like. Excellent.
Yeah, it's got a really nice mix of these elements going on. And there's a lot to think about as well. So it's, yeah, I really enjoyed this game. And like as soon as you sit down to play this, so we drew our 4 cards and Ignacio has said, right, you need to pick which ones you want to keep. And it was really, really intuitive. They've got these little markers on them. It's like 1, 2, or 3 pegs. So if there's one peg in it, that's the only version of that card in the entire deck. So even though I don't know how to play, I know that that card is good. But to use that card, I've got to spend one of my workers. If I spend one of my workers, that's one less action I'm going to be able to commit during my actual turn. So within seconds of playing, you're already making interesting choices that are going to affect the rest of your turn, the rest of your action, the rest of the phase. Really good.
I was really impressed by this.
I mean, I wrote up my review of it today, my first thoughts, and the more I wrote, the more I was like, I just got to play this again.
Yeah, no, I want to get this to the table again, yeah. A shame I can't because it's not out yet.
Yeah, it sounds really good.
Yeah, so I think if you pre-order it, you're looking at mid-July to be getting this. And then there's a pre-release at... What's the next con that's coming up? Origins.
Gen Con's the next big one.
Gen Con.
Yeah.
And then it's released in August, I believe.
Which is about a month away, Gen Con.
Yeah.
Which the news ferrets will be very busy that week.
Yeah, it is. It's the end of the month, isn't it? So, And if you pre-order it, you get a cool little wooden Yeti meeple as the first player marker.
Awesome. Sold.
Yeah. It's about that big. It's about an inch and a half big by the looks of it.
Colour me interested.
I think you will quite like this one because it is one of those games where you have to, as you said, you've got interesting decisions straight away. Not quite at the point where you do something and go shit, but sometimes you will because you'll go grab an apple and realise you wanted a fish, kind of thing.
I make that mistake all the time.
Well, yeah.
What would you like in your lunchbox, Andy? An apple or a fish? Well,
all I'd say is don't try Andy's apple pie.
It's probably good life advice in general, to be honest.
That's Imperial Settlers, Empires of the North. It's available from pre-order from the Portal website right now. We suggest you go give it a look because both me and Rory were rather impressed.
Excellent. Yeah. I may have to try that.
So, Big Potato Games very kindly sent me a review copy of the new party game Blockbuster Video. And it's based on the Blockbuster video store that hopefully everybody remembers because we're not all that old that we've forgotten about Blockbuster Video and only remember Netflix now. So,
well, my problem is when you say Blockbuster, I was hoping it was going to be a Bob Holness-based game.
No.
Yeah, that would have been amazing.
So we could have made that. Can I have a pee please Bob joke continuously?
But you've made it anyway, Steve, so we're okay.
Tick.
So this game, the game comes in an old VHS style box. The board looks a little bit like a clacker board. It's got this lovely little plastic button buzzer thing, which needs batteries. Batteries are not included with the game. And then you've got a load of cards. So what you're trying to do, you're trying to collect a set of cards of all the different movie genres. And you do that when they get laid out by whoever wins the head-to-head round. And you have to then pick a card, you turn it over, and it'll be Groundhog Day. And you have to decide in your team whether you're going to do either describe it in one word, you either take a quote from that film, or you have to act it out. So it's kind of that mishmash of kind of charades and that type of game. But we are just going to try some head-to-head because I think it's going to be funny to see you two stew over this. The way you work out who's going to go first in this is you've got this little buzzer. And I'm going to flip over one of these cards and you then have 15 seconds. I'm going to start with Steve, 15 seconds to come up with a movie that meets these criteria. Okay. The one rule that I can remember from my demo of this is that you can't pick sequels if somebody's already had the original. So if I say, movies with time travel in, you can't say Back to the Future 2 if Andy's already said Back to the Future.
Okay. Fair enough.
Right. So Steve, the criteria is movies with a dog.
Oh God. K9.
No.
Do I have to say as many as possible?
No, that's just it. It's done. Over to Andy.
Okay.
Andy, movies with a dog.
Oh God.
Just a blank look on his face.
Oh, Lethal Weapon.
Steve, movies with a dog. Just keep going. It's last month's
Turner and Hooch.
Oh! Andy.
Back to the Future.
Steve, I don't remember dogging back.
Marley and Me.
Oh, movies with a dog. Movies with a dog. Shit. Sherlock Holmes. Because there is a dog in that. I don't know if it's in the movie or not.
No, it is. Yeah, it is. Yeah.
Oh God. God, there's hundreds of them. Why can I not think of any? Independence Day.
Okay, right,
Of course,
good.
yes.
Yeah.
Secret Life of Pets.
Watched that the other day.
Bolt.
Oh,
Ooh. Oh God.
we're into animation now, so.
Over the Fence.
Okay, yeah.
Over the Hedge, whatever it's called.
Over the hedge.
Beethoven.
Oh, you bastard. Dog. I'm going to lose this.
Just love the look on your face.
No, I can't. I'm
That's
gone.
it. Why did neither one of you say 101 Dalmatians?
Because I can't stand Disney.
Okay. There you go. So that.
Because I could not think of that.
Yeah, also that, yeah.
So that was just, obviously, that is just the head-to-head. That is how you work out who is going to lay the cards out over this board for then the actual real game to commence. So, yeah.
Okay, so what's the real game then? Is that the real game? Is like the charades and things like that?
Yes, so what you've got a board with one word, quote it, and act it. So if you win the head-to-head, you're going to take a set of cards, and you're going to place a card in each one of these spaces. But you get to determine which cards you're going to give your opponent. And since the aim of the game is to have a complete set, so comedy, action, horror, and so on and so forth, you can see what your opponents have got. They've lost, so you can go, right, you need comedy, so I'm not going to give you a comedy card. And you've just got to make them work through all of this other stuff so that you can essentially bag yourself time to get the cards that you need. I really enjoyed my demo of this, and all I did was the head-to-head, but the rest of it looks really good fun, and I can't wait to give it a go.
Awesome.
Thanks for playing, gents.
It's quite all right.
No worries.
Was that more or less enjoyable than you expected, Andy?
That was all right. I reckon after a few beers, it would be even better.
I think this is going to be a cracking pub game, but that's what Big Potato do, don't they? So.
It's Big Potato, is it? Okay,
Yeah.
so this is Wonky Donkey and all that lot.
Yes.
Right then, I think with that quiz show at the end, it's time to draw this event to a close. So, thank you very much for listening. We have been Polyhedron Collider. If you'd like to give us a review on iTunes or share us with your friends, please do so. If you'd like to chat to us, we are available on Twitter. Collectively, we are at PolyhedronC, which is usually me, but I am also available on at Wahofflemadenga.
I am at Sonic Age with a 0.
I am at Rory J. Summers.
And Mr. John Cage can be contacted on John_Cage. We're also on Facebook. Just search Polyhedron Collider and on the Board Game Geek Guild 2726.
We also run a weekly, but we alternate in groups, session of Dungeons & Dragons, which can be found on twitch.tv/Polyhedron Collider. And John then uploads those sessions to youtube.com/user/Polyhedron Collider.
He needs to pull his finger out because he hasn't loaded them for ages.
He hasn't done a few, has he?
No. He can't defend himself here either.
No, what a shame. Never mind.
Anyway, we should be back in a couple of weeks with more tabletop gaming goodness. Until then, tatty bye.
Ta-ra.
Bye-bye.
I wonder if I can find it. No, I watched that much crap on YouTube that it's... Make Your Own Chicken Plucker is on my history of YouTube videos.
What?
That was for work. I was trying to work out the nuts.
Of course it was. Yeah. It's for work day, honest.
It was for work because somebody is complaining that they were deafened by the noise of a chicken plucker.
Oh, that's amazing. Is it possible to be deafened by a chicken plucker?
My view was no, because it was a very simple electric motor.
Or even a chicken plucker's son?
Well, yes.